Who let
Please
him
don't
cry
take
like
him.
that?
It wasn't
CEO
his fault,
Preston
I
Vale's
swear it.
voice thundered through the marble corridors, sharp enough to stop the clocks.
Don't
The
go.
cry had pierced the
Please,
stillness
you
of the
can't just
mansion,
leave.
and
He's
now
almost
so
here.
had he. Maya William froze mid-swipe of the window pane on the second floor, her microfiber cloth still damp in her hand. She had only been working in the Vale estate for days, assigned to routine cleaning on the east wing. No one ever mentioned the fifth floor. In fact, most of the staff avoided it like it was cursed. But that sound, the shrill, cyclical sobbing that now rose again, wasn't something she could ignore. It wasn't a hungry cry. It wasn't sleepy or cranky. It was the sound of panic, the kind that clawed from the inside out. "Miss," the butler called from downstairs. "Stay clear of the upper wing." She didn't answer. Maya climbed the final steps, heart racing. At the end of the hallway,
You knew
behind a
exactly
partially
what you were
open
doing
door,
when you transferred those
flickering
funds,
light
didn't you?
pulsed from a sensory projector.
That is simply
A
not
boy,
true, Counsel.
maybe 7, sat curled on the carpeted
This
floor,
evidence proves
rocking
beyond a
violently,
shadow of a doubt
hitting his forehead
that you are
in rhythm
lying to
against
the
a
court.
bookshelf. No supervision, no comfort,
You knew
just
exactly what
pain
you were
and
doing when you
repetition.
transferred the
She
funds.
paused at the
Stop
threshold,
lying to
everything
this
in
court
her said
and
to turn
admit the
back,
truth.
but something deeper,
You deliberately
something
withheld
old
this evidence.
and
You are
buried
knowingly
kept her
perverting the
rooted.
course of justice.
Her brother
Objection,
Jermaine
Your Honor.
used to do the
Counsel's
same thing.
accusations are
Same
improper and
rocking,
inflammatory.
same sound. She remembered it vividly under the dinner table, arms tight across his chest, face strewn with tears no one could understand. Maya stepped softly into the room and crouched several feet away. "Hey, sweetheart," she whispered, voice barely audible over his cries. "I'm not going to touch you. Just sitting right here." The boy didn't respond, but his movement slowed slightly. She kept her hands in sight, palms up. Then slowly, she lifted one hand and traced a
Please,
simple
don't take
sign
him.
across her chest.
It wasn't his fault,
Safe,
I swear
a
it.
motion she hadn't used in years, one her grandmother had taught her to calm Jermaine
Don't go.
when words failed.
Please, you can't
The
just
boy
leave.
glanced at her,
He's almost
just
here.
a flicker, then resumed rocking. A sharp voice cut through the air behind her. "What the hell are you doing?" Preston Vale stood in the doorway, a towering figure of tailored precision and barely contained fury. In one hand, he clutched his phone. The other gripped the doorknob like it might snap under his fingers. "I'm sorry, sir," Maya said, standing instinctively. "I heard him crying." "And who gave you permission to be in this room?"
No one.
I thought he might be in danger." "Step away from my son." Her muscles stiffened, but she obeyed. Carefully, she stepped aside as Preston strode toward the boy. The moment he tried to lift his son, the child erupted, screaming louder,
You knew
kicking,
exactly what you were
clawing,
doing when you
his
transferred
arms
those funds,
flailing
didn't you?
in full panic.
That is
Preston
simply not
struggled
true,
to hold
Counsel.
him, shocked by the intensity.
This
"What's
evidence
wrong with him?"
proves
he
beyond
muttered.
a shadow
"Why
of a
does
doubt
he?
that
May
you are
I?"
lying to the
Maya
court.
said gently, stepping forward again.
You
Preston
knew
didn't stop
exactly
her.
what you were doing
She
when you
knelt,
transferred
reached
the
out,
funds.
and the
Stop
moment the
lying to
child
this
felt her
court and
presence,
admit
his
the
screaming
truth.
eased. He
You
twisted toward
deliberately
her
withheld
and
this
collapsed
evidence.
into
You
her
are
arms
knowingly
like he'd
perverting
been
the course of
waiting for her
justice.
all
Objection,
along.
Your Honor.
His small
Counsel's
hands
accusations
gripped
are
her
improper
sleeve.
and inflammatory.
He buried his face in her shoulder. The silence that followed was absolute. If this moment touched her heart, give Maya a like. She didn't save him with words, but with quiet empathy. And tell us in the comments where you're watching this from. You might not be the only one nearby feeling the same warmth right now. Preston stared stunned.
How?
"What did you do?" "I didn't do anything, sir," Maya said softly. "I just listened and signed. Sign language a little. My brother, he's
Please, don't
nonverbal
take him.
autistic.
It
This
wasn't
used to
his
help
fault,
him calm
I
down."
swear it.
Preston's posture shifted almost imperceptibly. His suit looked
Don't
suddenly
go.
too tight for him.
Please, you can't
His
just
presence,
leave. He's
so
almost here.
forceful a minute ago, was now suspended, like he didn't know what to do with himself. "What's your name?" he asked.
Maya.
"Maya William. I clean the East Wing." "You're not a therapist?"
No, sir.
"Just a cleaner." He watched her hold his son like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Can you stay a little longer today?" Maya nodded, still swaying gently with the boy in her arms. "Yes, sir," she whispered. Preston turned, walking slowly out of the room. For the first time in months, the house was still. No echoes of pain, no tense footsteps, no slammed doors, just a boy and a stranger now, not so strange, wrapped in quiet understanding.
You knew
And though
exactly
Preston
what
didn't
you were
say
doing
it,
when you
the
transferred
look on
those
his
funds,
face
didn't you?
said everything.
That is
Something
simply
had
not
shifted.
true, Counsel.
Something was beginning. The sun had
This
dipped lower
evidence
by the
proves
time
beyond a
Maya
shadow
descended the
of a
stairs
doubt
again,
that you are
her back
lying to the
slightly
court.
aching from holding the boy for so long. Alicia
You knew
had heard
exactly
Preston call
what you were
him that
doing
one
when you
Shad
transferred the
finally
funds.
drifted to sleep in her
Stop
arms.
lying to this
His
court
face
and
pressed
admit
into
the
the curve
truth.
of her shoulder, like he
You
belonged
deliberately
there.
withheld this
She had
evidence.
laid him
You are
gently on a
knowingly perverting
beanbag
course
in the
of
corner
justice.
of his
Objection,
nursery,
Your Honor.
covering him
Counsel's
with a weighted
accusations are
blanket
improper and
she'd found
inflammatory.
folded in the closet. He hadn't stirred. Now the grand mansion felt heavier than it had when she first entered it. Each chandelier sparkled, but felt cold. Each marble tile under her feet clicked like a reminder that she didn't belong. She was a cleaner, a temp no less. And she had just broken a major boundary. She turned toward the service hallway, expecting to be dismissed, maybe even terminated on the spot. "Miss William." The voice came from behind her, clipped and clear. She turned
Please,
and
don't
found
take
Preston
him.
Vale standing
It
at the
wasn't
end of
his
the
fault, I
corridor,
swear it.
arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He was no longer holding
Don't
his
go.
phone.
Please,
Instead,
you
he
can't
held a
just
small
leave.
notepad,
He's
a legal
almost here.
pad, the kind that usually came out when something official was about to happen. Maya straightened instinctively. "Yes, sir. In my office, please." Her heart sank a little. She nodded and followed him down the long hallway through a set of double doors into an office she had only ever dusted from the outside. It was immaculate, modern, and sparsely decorated. Dark wood shelves held books with uncreased spines. A wall of windows looked out over the private garden. On the far end sat a massive desk of polished oak. He gestured to the chair in front of the desk.
Sit. 1.
Maya obeyed, folding her hands in her lap. Preston sat opposite her and remained silent for several seconds.
You knew
He tapped
exactly
a
what you
pen
were doing
against
when
the
you
edge of
transferred
the
those funds,
notepad.
didn't you?
She could hear a
That is
grandfather
simply not
clock
true,
ticking somewhere in the
Counsel.
distance. It felt like a courtroom,
This
and she
evidence
didn't know
proves
if she was
beyond
the
a shadow
witness
of a
or the
doubt
accused.
that you are
"You
lying
handled
to the
him like
court.
someone who'd done it 100 times," he said finally.
You knew
"I have a knot with
exactly what
him,
you were doing
just
when
with
you
someone like
transferred the
him."
funds.
"Your brother?"
Stop lying
"Yes,
to this
sir."
court and admit
Jermaine.
the truth.
He passed away 4 years
You
ago.
deliberately withheld
He
this
was.
evidence. You are
Preston's
knowingly
eyes
perverting the
flicked
course
up,
of justice.
and for a
Objection,
moment
Your
something
Honor.
human passed
Counsel's
across his
accusations are
face.
improper and
I'm sorry.
inflammatory.
Thank you.
He was silent again. Then he leaned back in his chair. No therapist, no specialist, no trained professional has been able to calm Eli down like that. Not in years. They all failed.
And you?
You just walked in there with a rag in your hand and fixed him. Maya's throat tightened. "I didn't fix him, sir. I just saw him."
Ugh.
That stopped him. The pen he'd been tapping fell still. "You saw him. Children like Eli. They don't need to be fixed.
Please don't
They need to be
take him.
heard. You
It wasn't
can't
his
rush their
fault, I
silence.
swear it.
You have to be willing to sit in it with them." Preston blinked slowly. "You sound
Don't
like
go.
someone who should be doing
Please,
more
you
than
can't
mopping
just leave.
floors."
He's
"I'm
almost
just
here.
someone who needed a job, sir. My grandmother's got medical bills, and this pays better than the diner." He looked down at his notes, then closed the notepad altogether. "I want to make you an offer." Maya blinked. "Sir, I need someone who can connect with Eli. Someone who can be consistent, not another overqualified stranger with a clipboard and a 2-week contract. Someone he already trusts. I'm not a nanny. I don't need a nanny. I need you." She shook her head gently. "Sir, with all due respect, I'll double your pay," he said, not giving her the space to finish. "You'll stay in the staff wing, private room, all expenses handled. Weekends off health insurance if you don't already have any, and you'll never
You
lift
knew
a mop
exactly
again."
what you were doing
Maya
when you
felt her
transferred
heart
those funds,
racing.
didn't you?
The numbers
That is
danced in her
simply
head.
not true,
That kind of
Counsel.
money could mean real treatment for Grandma Loretta.
This evidence
No
proves
more
beyond
skipped
a shadow of a
medications.
doubt that
No
you
more
are
stretching
lying to
food
the
stamps.
court.
But she also knew the risk. This wasn't
You knew
just a job.
exactly what you were
This
doing
was a
when you
boy
transferred
owned
the
with
funds.
fragile patterns
Stop lying
and
to
even
this
more
court
fragile
and admit
trust.
the truth.
If she accepted and
You
failed him,
deliberately withheld this
it wouldn't be
evidence.
just
You are
another
knowingly
nanny
perverting
leaving.
the course of justice.
It would be
Objection,
betrayal.
Your Honor.
I don't know if I
Accusations
can.
are improper and
Preston leaned
inflammatory.
forward, elbows on his desk. "Look, I've had behaviorists with degrees from Stanford, nannies from elite agencies, even a family counselor who charged $1 an hour. None of them lasted more than a week. You walked in, said nothing. And my son laid his head on your shoulder. I don't know what that is, but I know it's rare." Maya swallowed. "It's not magic, sir. It's just care." That's even rarer. She looked down at her hands, chipped nail polish and all. She thought about Loretta,
Please don't
about the
take
quiet
him.
way she'd say,
It wasn't his
"Baby,
fault, I swear
if God
it.
opens a door, don't stand there arguing about the knob. When would I start?
Don't go.
Tomorrow
Please,
morning.
you can't just
I'll have the
leave.
room prepared
He's
tonight."
almost here.
Maya nodded. "Okay, I'll try." Preston stood and extended his hand. She shook it small and firm. As she left the office, her mind was racing. She hadn't packed for a live-in job. She hadn't even told her landlord she was leaving. But beneath all that noise was something quieter, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. The next morning, Maya arrived with a small duffel bag slung over her shoulder and a cardboard box tucked under her arm. The housekeeper, Mrs. Green, led her to the staff quarters, the east side of the mansion near the back garden. The room was simple but warm. A twin bed, a reading chair, a desk facing the window. "Mr. Vale had
You knew
this redone
exactly
last
what you were
night,"
doing when you
Mrs.
transferred
Green
those
said,
funds, didn't you?
handing Maya a key
That is
card.
simply not
"Said you were
true,
important."
Counsel.
"I'm just a helper."
This
"Maybe, but
evidence proves
he don't give
beyond
spare
a
rooms
shadow
to
of a
helpers."
doubt that you
Maya
are
smiled
lying
politely
to the court.
and unpacked quickly. She kept her clothes on
You knew
hangers
exactly
and
what
placed
you were
a
doing
small
when you
framed
transferred the
photo of
funds.
Loretta on the
Stop
nightstand.
lying to this
By
court and admit the
a.m.,
truth.
she stood outside
You
Eli's
deliberately
nursery
withheld
again.
this evidence.
This
You are
time,
knowingly
when
perverting the
she
course
entered,
of justice.
the
Objection,
boy
Your
was
Honor.
already
Counsel's
awake.
accusations are
He
improper
sat on the
and
rug,
inflammatory.
sorting colored blocks into 2 piles in blue. "Morning, Eli," she said softly. He didn't look up, but he paused just for a beat. She stepped closer, sat cross-legged a few feet away, quiet, non-threatening. After a few minutes, he nudged a red block toward her with his toe. She smiled. "Thanks." She pushed a blue block back. The game had begun. Hours passed like that. No words, just color, rhythm, repetition. At one point,
Please
she
don't
began
take
to hum
him.
soft,
It wasn't
low,
his fault, I
familiar
swear
gospel
it.
tones. Eli didn't protest. In fact, he leaned in
Don't
slightly,
go.
the way
Please, you
someone
can't
might
just
toward
leave.
a warm fire.
He's almost here.
Preston watched from the doorway in silence. He wasn't ready to say it out loud, but something about the way Maya sat there still and steady, not trying to fix or force, made his chest ache in a way he didn't understand yet. No grief, not fear, something else, hope. Maya stood by the window of the nursery as dust crept in, her arms loosely folded and her gaze fixed on the garden below. The day had passed more quietly than she expected. No screaming, no outbursts, no frantic running. Eli hadn't spoken, of course. He still moved in silence, mostly engaged with the wooden puzzles and color-sorting games she had laid out, but he had let her sit closer this time. He hadn't flinched when she sang a soft tune under her breath.
You knew
He
exactly
had
what
even
you were
touched
doing
her
when you
sleeve
transferred
once
those
briefly
funds, didn't
when
you?
she reached across him for
That
a
is
blue
simply
triangle
not true,
piece.
Counsel.
That one small touch had lit something in her
evidence
cautious,
proves beyond
almost
a
sacred
shadow of
kind
a
of hope.
doubt that you are
Behind her,
lying to the
she
court.
heard soft footsteps. She turned just as
You knew
Preston Vale
exactly what
entered the
you were
nursery.
doing when you transferred
He wasn't
the
in his
funds.
usual suit,
Stop
just a
lying
white
to this
shirt with the
court
cuffs
and
rolled
admit
in
the
gray
truth.
slacks. His
You
face looked
deliberately
less
withheld this
carved than
evidence.
usual,
You are
a
knowingly
little
perverting
softer
the
around
course
the
of
eyes.
justice.
Objection,
"How
Your
is he
Honor.
today?"
Counsel's
he asked,
accusations are
his
improper
voice
and
quieter than the
inflammatory.
sharp bark she remembered from their first meeting. "Peaceful," she said, a faint smile lifting the corner of her lips. No meltdowns, no biting or hitting. He was steady. Preston stepped farther into the room, his eyes on his son, who was now lying on his stomach, carefully pushing a toy train along the track. "I don't know what you're doing," he muttered, "but it's working." "It's not a trick, Mr. Vale," she replied gently. "It's time, it's presence, and letting him lead." He nodded slowly,
Please
as if
don't
trying to
take
understand
him.
a language
It
he had
wasn't
never
his
learned
fault,
to
I
read.
swear it.
"He used to love trains," he said suddenly. Emmy wife used to take him to the Railroad
go.
Museum
Please,
every
you
other
can't just
Saturday.
leave. He's
Maya's
almost
gaze
here.
turned toward Preston. His face had turned toward the window now, eyes distant. "He hasn't asked to go since she passed," he continued, his voice low and even. "Not once." She didn't say anything, didn't push, just let the silence speak its part. "I thought we were doing okay," he went on. "After the funeral, I hired the best therapists money could find. Enrolled him in every specialized program that accepted him. I spared nothing, but it only got worse. The tantrums, the fear of strangers, the screaming." He turned back to Maya. "And now here you are, and he's calmer than I've seen in over a year." Maya shifted slightly. Grief isn't something you treat like a flu, Mr. Vale.
You knew
It's not
exactly
linear.
what you were
Not
doing
for
when you
you.
transferred those
Not
funds,
for
didn't
him.
you?
Preston
That
didn't
is simply
answer
not
right
true,
away.
Counsel.
Then he asked, "Do you think he remembers
This
her?"
evidence proves
"I think he
beyond a
feels her
shadow of a
absence,"
doubt
she said
that
after
you are
a pause.
lying to the court.
Even if he doesn't know how to say it. He sat in the armchair
You knew
by the
exactly
bookshelf,
what you were doing
elbows
when
on
you
his
transferred
knees,
the funds.
looking at his son with
Stop
something
lying to
between
this
guilt
court
and
and
awe.
admit the truth.
"I was married for years," he
You
said
deliberately
suddenly.
withheld this evidence.
"We met in
You are
college.
knowingly perverting the course
I was
of justice.
rigid.
Objection, Your
She was
Honor.
Jazz."
Counsel's
She
accusations
laughed
are
too
improper
loud,
and inflammatory.
danced barefoot on our balcony in the rain, made breakfast at midnight. Maya smiled. "She sounds wonderful." "She was," he said, and something in his voice cracked. Just slightly. Eli looked up for a moment and locked eyes with his father. Preston stood and approached his son slowly. "Hey, bud," he said softly, crouching beside him. "How's the train coming?" Eli didn't speak, didn't react, but he didn't recoil either. Preston looked up at Maya. "You think he'll ever talk
Please
again?"
don't take
"I
him.
think he already is,"
It wasn't
she
his fault,
replied,
I swear
her
it.
eyes warm. "You just have to learn to listen to the version of language he trusts."
Don't
He
go.
held his son's gaze
Please,
a moment
you can't
longer,
just leave.
then nodded
He's
and
almost
rose.
here.
Later that evening, Maya returned to her room in the staff wing. It was modest, but comfortable. She had unpacked what little she had. 3 changes of clothes, 2 books, a battered journal, and a framed photo of her grandmother, Loretta, holding a young Germaine. She picked it up now and ran her thumb across the glass. "You'd like him," she whispered. "He's a mess, but he's trying." There was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Mrs. Green holding a tray with a covered plate and a folded napkin. "Mr. Vale says you haven't eaten since lunch," the older woman said, a curious note in her voice. "He insisted you get a proper dinner." Mia blinked. I didn't realize.
You knew
I lost
exactly
track of
what you were
time.
doing when you transferred
Apparently
those
so
funds,
did the
didn't you?
boy. He didn't
That is
scream at all
simply
today.
not true,
Miracle
Counsel.
of miracles. Maya
This
accepted the
evidence
tray with a
proves beyond
grateful
a shadow
smile.
of a doubt
"Thank
that
you."
you are lying
Before
to
she
the
turned to
court.
go, Mrs. Green lingered. "Don't get
You
too
knew
comfortable,"
exactly what you
she
were doing
warned,
when you transferred
but her
the
voice
funds.
held no malice.
Stop lying to this
Mr.
court
Vale
and
changes
admit the
moods like
truth.
the wind. Maya
You
nodded
deliberately
once.
withheld this
"I
evidence.
don't
You are
expect
knowingly
anything."
perverting the course of
She
justice.
closed the door
Objection, Your
and
Honor.
sat down at her
Counsel's
desk,
accusations are
lifting the
improper
lid
and
on the plate.
inflammatory.
Grilled salmon, roasted sweet potatoes, and green beans. Her stomach grumbled in response. As she ate, her mind kept replaying the image of Preston on the floor beside his son. It had been brief, but genuine, vulnerable, and she couldn't help but wonder, what kind of man tries to control the world, but forgets how to hold his child? The next morning, Maya entered the nursery at sharp. Eli was already awake, sitting by the window, tracing shapes on the glass
Please
with his
don't
finger.
take him.
The sunlight
It wasn't
cut
his
a
fault, I
warm
swear
line
it.
across the carpet. "Morning, Eli," she said softly, approaching
Don't
slowly.
go.
He didn't
Please,
turn,
you can't
but
just leave.
he didn't stiffen
He's almost
either.
here.
She sat beside him, not too close. After a few quiet minutes, she took out a small whiteboard and a dry erase marker. "I thought we could try something," she said gently. She drew a sun, then a cloud, then handed the marker to him. He stared at it for a long moment, then took it slowly and drew a crooked heart. Maya smiled even as tears stung behind her eyes. From the hallway, Preston had stopped outside the door. He watched the moment through the crack in the frame, his hand hovering near the handle, but not opening it. Something inside him was shifting slowly, painfully, like an old hinge, learning to swing again. He turned away before they noticed, but his thoughts stayed in the room.
You knew
That
exactly what
night,
you were doing when you
he sat
transferred
alone in
those
his
funds,
study,
didn't you?
with a glass of
That
scotch
is
he didn't
simply
drink.
not true,
On the
Counsel.
desk lay a file Maya Williams' employee
This
application,
evidence proves
her
beyond a
background check,
shadow of a doubt
and a
that
handwritten
you are
reference
lying
letter
to the
from her
court.
former manager at a diner in Queens. He
You
read
knew
the note
exactly
twice.
what you were doing
She's
when you
not
transferred
fancy,
the funds.
but she shows up
Stop
early,
lying to
works
this
late,
court
and
and
never
admit the
complains.
truth.
She's kind,
You
and she knows
deliberately
how to
withheld this
listen,
evidence. You
even
are
when
knowingly
people don't know
perverting
how
the
to
course
talk.
of justice.
Objection,
Preston
Your
folded the
Honor.
paper
Counsel's
and leaned back in
accusations
his
are
chair.
improper and inflammatory.
Outside, the wind stirred the trees along the stone fence. Inside, for the first time in months, the silence felt like comfort, not a void. In a house built by money, guarded by rules, and haunted by loss, someone had finally arrived who didn't try to fix the cracks. She simply sat beside them, And for Eli, and maybe for Preston, too, that was enough to begin again. It had been nearly weeks since Maya William had taken the job that wasn't hers to begin with, caring for the boy no one could reach.
Please don't take
And
him.
by now her presence
wasn't
in the
his
Vale
fault, I
mansion
swear it.
had gone from anomaly to necessity. Each morning, she entered
Don't
Eli's
go.
nursery
Please,
with the
you
same
can't just
quiet
leave.
ritual.
He's almost
No
here.
sudden movements, no grand gestures, just the steady rhythm of showing up. And in return, Eli began to offer more. He hadn't spoken, not once. But his eyes began to seek her out. He followed her with silent trust. He handed her objects, little things, a block, a button, a puzzle pieces, as if they were messages he didn't yet know how to write. That morning, Maya laid a new routine before him. She brought in a soft mat, some scented clay, and a series of cards with emotions drawn in bold, cartoonish expressions. "This one's happy," she said, showing the first card. "Happy like when the music plays." Eli took the card, touched it once, then looked up at her face.
You knew
Slowly,
exactly what
he
you were
pressed the
doing when you
card to his
transferred
own
those
chest.
funds, didn't you?
"Yeah," she
That is
whispered.
simply not
"That's
true,
right."
Counsel.
When Preston came home that evening,
This
the
evidence
house
proves
felt different
beyond a
again.
shadow of a doubt
Not silent the
that
way it
you are
had been for a
lying to
year.
the court.
Not empty, but humming faintly with signs
You
of
knew
life.
exactly
In
what
the
you were
kitchen,
doing when you
Mrs.
transferred
Green
the
had
funds.
soft jazz
Stop
playing from the
lying to
tablet.
this court
The
and
windows
admit
were
the
cracked
truth.
open. Somewhere upstairs, a
deliberately
child
withheld this
laughed.
evidence. You are
Not
knowingly
loud,
perverting the course
not
of justice.
boisterous,
Objection, Your
but
Honor.
a quick,
Counsel's
pure
accusations
giggle
are
that stopped
improper
him in
and
his tracks.
inflammatory.
He dropped his keys onto the hallway console and followed the sound. Maya was kneeling on the living room carpet, a toy giraffe in one hand, a sock puppet on the other. Eli sat across from her, cross-legged, watching intently as the giraffe and the sock puppet mimed a silly fight over a cup of pretend tea. When the sock puppet fell over with a squeaky oof, Eli's mouth stretched into a full smile. No sound came, but his whole face lit up. Preston couldn't remember the last time he'd seen it.
Please
Maya
don't
noticed
take
him in the doorway.
It wasn't
She
his
straightened
fault,
quickly,
I swear it.
brushing lint from her slacks. "Mr. Vale, I didn't hear you come in."
Don't go.
He walked
Please,
in
you
slowly,
can't just
still
leave.
looking at Eli.
He's almost here.
Was that him laughing? She nodded. Sort of. No sound, but he's getting close. Preston crouched beside his son. "Hey, buddy," he said. Eli didn't retreat. He didn't flinch. He reached out and touched his father's shirt briefly before turning back to the toys. Preston felt his throat tighten. "He's trusting you more," Maya said softly. Preston nodded, but didn't look away from his son. He used to play with Emma like that. She had this sock puppet voice. It was ridiculous, but he loved it. He stood up and looked down at Maya. "Thank you." She gave a faint smile, eyes warm. "I'm not doing anything you couldn't do." "That's the part one find hardest to believe," he said, half joking,
You knew
half
exactly
defeated.
what you were doing
Later
when you
that
transferred
night,
those funds, didn't
Maya
you?
made her way to the small
is
garden
simply
behind the
not
staff
true,
wing.
Counsel.
It was late spring, and the Elas
This
had just started
evidence
to bloom.
proves beyond a
She
shadow
carried
of
a
a
mug of
doubt
tea,
that you
her
are
grandmother's
lying to the
blend
court.
cinnamon, and dried hibiscus. She sat on the wooden bench under the magnolia tree and breathed.
Stop
She'd been
lying to
afraid
this
at
court
first that
and
her
admit
time
the
here would
truth.
be temporary. That
You
one
deliberately
wrong
withheld
word,
this evidence.
one
You
wrong
are
moment
knowingly
would send her
perverting the
back
course of
to mopping
justice.
Objection,
floors.
Your Honor.
But Preston
Counsel's
hadn't just
accusations are
tolerated
improper
her.
and inflammatory.
He'd started seeking her out. At first only about Eli, then about meals, then books, and lately just conversation. She didn't fool herself into thinking she belonged in his world. He was white, wealthy, powerful, and guarded. She was none of those things. But when they talked, truly talked, there was something level in it. Human. The garden gate creaked behind her. She turned. Preston stood in the moonlight holding 2 mugs. "I thought you might like chamomile," he said. She blinked, surprised.
Please don't take him.
"That's very
It
thoughtful.
wasn't his fault, I swear it.
I figured it's either that or more bourbon. And you don't strike me as a bourbon
Don't
before
go.
bed person."
Please, you
She
can't just
chuckled
leave.
number.
He's almost
That would
here.
put me straight on my back. He sat beside her. "Not too close. You come out here every night when I can't sleep."
Same.
They sipped in silence for a moment. "I've been meaning to ask," he said, his voice quieter now, more careful. "Your brother, what happened?" She exhaled slow. "He had a seizure. Complications from an infection. He passed in the hospital while I was filling out paperwork for insurance." Preston looked at her.
I'm sorry.
"Thank you." He was the only person in the world who saw me without expecting anything back.
He was quiet, then said,
"That sounds like Eli."
"Yeah," she said softly. "It does."
Another pause. Preston ran a hand through his hair.
You knew
You make this
exactly
look
what you were
easy,
doing when you
but
transferred those
I know
funds,
it's
didn't
not.
you?
I know I'm
That is
difficult.
simply not
that this
true,
house can be
counsel.
cold. That Eli's challenges
This
can be
evidence
overwhelming.
proves beyond a
She
shadow
turned
of
to
a
him.
doubt
"You're
that
not
you are
difficult,
lying
Mr.
to the
Vale.
court.
You're just grieving in the only way you know how."
You knew
His
exactly
eyes met
what you were
hers.
doing when you
"Call me
transferred the
Preston,
funds.
please."
Stop lying
She
to this court
hesitated,
and admit
then
the
nodded.
truth.
"Okay, Preston."
You
A
deliberately
gust
withheld
of
this
wind
evidence. You are
rustled the
knowingly
branches.
perverting the course
The
of
lights
justice.
from the
Objection,
second
Your
floor
Honor.
glowed
Counsel's
softly through the
accusations are
windows.
improper and
Somewhere above
inflammatory.
them, Eli stirred in his bed. "I want to learn," Preston said suddenly. "I want to know what you know about him, about how to reach him." Maya's heart beat faster. "You're already halfway there. I watch you with him. The way you read his cues, the way you understand what he needs before he asks. I don't have that instinct." "You don't need instinct," she said. "You need willingness. And he'll teach you if you're patient enough to listen." He looked at her, and for a moment something shifted in the air between them.
Please don't
"I want to
take
try,"
him.
he said.
It wasn't
And
his
for the
fault,
first
I
time,
swear it.
Maya saw not the CEO, not the man with perfect posture and calculated
go.
words,
Please,
but
you
a father
can't just
uncertain,
leave. He's
flawed,
almost here.
and finally ready. The next day, everything changed. Maya led a small lesson in the living room. Simple sign language, more stop, help, love. Preston joined them, clumsy but earnest. Eli watched, then copied. At one point, Preston signed more, and Eli responded with a half-formed version of the same gesture. Preston's eyes filled, but he didn't say a word, just nodded, smiled, and reached for his son's hand. Later that evening, Maya wrote in her journal by the window, recounting the moment. "He's coming back to his son," she wrote. "Not as a savior, not as a fixer, but as a father learning a new language. One built on silence, trust,
You knew
and
exactly
steady
what
hands."
you were doing when you transferred
She looked
those
up as a
funds,
knock
didn't you?
came at her door.
That is
Preston
simply
stood
not
outside
true,
holding
counsel.
a book. "I found this in Emma's things," he
This
said.
evidence proves
"It's about
beyond a
parenting
shadow
children
of a
with
doubt
sensory
that
disorders.
you are lying
I
to the
thought
court.
you might want to read it together." She took it gently.
You knew
"I'd like
exactly
that."
what you were doing
And then
when
he
you
added
transferred
before
the
walking
funds.
away,
Stop
"Thank you for
lying to
staying."
this court
That
and
night,
admit the truth.
Maya sat on her bed.
You
The book in
deliberately
her
withheld
lap
this
and the
evidence.
memory
You
of
are knowingly
Jermaine warm
perverting
in
the
her
course of
chest.
justice.
Objection,
She
Your
wasn't
Honor.
just staying.
Counsel's
She
accusations
was building
are improper
something
and
slowly,
inflammatory.
quietly, like Eli's laughter, like trust blooming between unlikely hands. The early summer light streamed through the nursery windows, casting golden beams onto the wooden floor. Maya sat cross-legged across from Eli, gently encouraging him to press different animal shapes into a soft patch of kinetic sand. It was part of their morning
Please don't
routine.
take him.
Now sensory
It
time
wasn't his
before
fault, I
breakfast,
swear
a
it.
calm, consistent way to ease him into the day. Eli didn't speak, but
Don't go.
he responded more
Please,
and
you
more
can't
with eye
just
contact,
leave. He's
small
almost
gestures,
here.
even tentative smiles. When Maya sang softly, he swayed. When she laughed, he tilted his head to watch her longer. And once when she reached for the sand mold he liked, he touched her wrist and pushed it gently toward her. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't respond, but his fingers brushed her palm in reply. Preston had begun joining these sessions 3 times a week. He no longer hovered in the background, arms folded and unreadable. Now he knelt beside his son, mimicking Mia's gestures, learning the signs slowly, but with deep concentration.
Cow.
Mia signed that morning, forming the horns with her fingers. Eli didn't copy, but he stared, then pointed to the small
You
cow
knew
figure on the
exactly
mat
what you were
and
doing when you
pressed it into the
transferred those
sand
funds,
with
didn't you?
surprising care.
That is
Preston
simply
laughed
not
quietly,
true, counsel.
but genuinely.
He's getting it, he
This
said.
evidence
Maya
proves beyond a
smiled,
shadow
then
of a
turned
doubt
toward him.
that you are
"So are
lying
you."
to the court.
That afternoon, Preston invited her to walk the
You
garden
knew
with him
exactly
after
what
lunch.
you were doing when you
Eli had
transferred the
fallen
funds.
asleep in the sunroom,
Stop lying
a
to this
blanket
court
loosely wrapped
and
around
admit the
him,
truth.
and a stuffed bear held
You
tight in one
deliberately
hand.
withheld this evidence.
Maya
You are
hesitated
knowingly
for a
perverting
moment,
the course of justice.
unsure if this was
Objection,
still
Your Honor.
professional,
Counsel's
but then
accusations are
followed him out
improper and
past the
inflammatory.
manicured hedges down toward the old gazebo. They walked slowly side by side. Preston had removed his jacket and loosened his collar. It was the first time she'd seen him without that ever-present armor. Eli's therapist called this morning. He said, I didn't mention it earlier because I wanted to see how today went. Maya looked up. Is everything all right? She said, his developmental milestones are still delayed, but she noted significant behavioral improvements. He's beginning to trust again,
Please don't
Maya
take
said
him.
softly.
It
That
wasn't
takes
his
more
fault,
than
I
therapy.
swear it.
That takes safety. Preston nodded, hands in his pockets.
Don't go.
She also
Please,
said,
you can't just
well,
leave.
she
He's
asked
almost
what
here.
changed in the home environment. I told her it was you. Maya chuckled,
You knew
brushing a
exactly what
braid
you were
back
doing when you
behind her ear.
transferred those funds,
I'm
didn't
just
you?
one part of it.
That is
He stopped
simply
walking
not
and
true,
turned toward
Counsel.
her. You're the part that matters.
This
She met
evidence
his
proves
eyes,
beyond a
and for
shadow
a brief
of a doubt
second,
that
the
you are
world
lying
narrowed.
to the court.
The breeze slowed. The sound of birds faded.
You knew exactly
Preston's
what you were
expression
doing when
was
you
different
transferred
now.
the funds.
Not the guarded,
Stop lying
clipped
to this
attachment
court
she'd
and
come to
admit the
expect,
truth.
but something quieter.
You deliberately
raw.
withheld this evidence.
Before
You are
Emma
knowingly
died,
perverting the
he
course
began.
of justice.
Objection,
His
Your
voice
Honor.
more graveled
Counsel's
than
accusations
usual.
are improper and
She said I was
inflammatory.
always 2 steps behind, that I never saw what was in front of me until it was too late. Maya said nothing, only listened.